Welcome along to the Premier League show on what has been just a potentially defining, massive weekend of Premier League action. Wow, there's so much to go through, but before we do, I want to give out a shout out to my Hotspot community. Last time I recorded here, I had a grand total of 5 subscribers. Today, I sit here with a total of 120 subscribers. So whether you guys are checking in on the Instagram and getting it through there or through friends, word of mouth, we've got a TikTok, but not starting any content quite yet. But that's on its way. Our Twitter account. Man, I'm so blessed. You guys are fantastic. Thank you so much. But make sure you're liking the content. All right? We're about to come up with so many big things coming around the corner. I'm still working on my mock draft, which should be out soon, with plenty of time to spare before the draft begins. It has been filmed. It's just in the middle of the editing process. But I hope you guys enjoy it. It's something I spent a long time working on, so it should be a lot of fun. So look out for that. NBA playoffs begin with the NBA play-in tournament, so we will begin our NBA coverage. I was sort of waiting until the beginning of the playoffs to start discussing, to begin our NBA show, which is around the corner. We're going to make our first NBA show at the conclusion of the first round of play, so the first 4 play-in games. We're going to make our first NBA show. Then we'll do our second one after the play-in finals, and then we'll do a preview to the NBA playoffs in that episode. So look out for all that content coming up. But for now, we will begin and discuss the Premier League. And as I just mentioned, what a week of Premier League football. We're all kind of waiting to see the next twist and the next turn. And I discussed last week when Man United and Liverpool drew at Old Trafford, I said that was the first twist. Well, not only did the second twist come this week, but the third twist came as well. So we're going to be discussing all of that. But let's just get right into this stuff because there's so much to cover and not long time to cover it in. So once again, thank you so much to everyone. We're on the road to hopefully a big things. Hopefully in the future I can fill out stadiums with subs. But for now, to every one of you 120 out there who have subscribed to me in the last few days, thank you so much. And let's kick it off. Let's kick off our Premier League coverage right here, right now. From St. James's Park, in the race for the top 4. So before we get into that juicy title race stuff, we're going to talk about the top 4. And where we left off last time, obviously, Spurs seemed to have taken the advantage in the top 4 race. Aston Villa had drawn with Brentford. Tottenham had beaten Nottingham Forest. I was sitting here on this very channel criticizing Emery for his lineup that he put out against Newcastle and not respecting the competition. Not against Newcastle, for the lineup he put up against Man City and disrespecting the competition. And for basically the Premier League to do what it does, which is be very unforgiving, but then turning up with their full strength side and dropping points against Brentford. Tottenham had a chance on this game to capitalize. I always have sort of this adage that when you finally get your noses in front into that box seat, that very first game is important. It sets the tempo for if you can maintain that. You're the most vulnerable in that very next game because there's a lot of pressure, and you have to deal with that pressure. And spoiler alert: Tottenham Hotspur failed that test on this game. Um, they actually started off well for a good 15 minutes. I think the game was evenly balanced. But on the half an hour mark, um, the sloppy defending from Tottenham. Anthony Gordon wins the ball high up the pitch, and he slides in a through ball to Alexander Isak, who skips past Van der Ven and coolly puts Newcastle United 1-0 up. And the momentum from there just one led to two. And a poor clearance by Vicario, one on one like saved by the boundary line, came down, and all of a sudden, Anthony Gordon, who assisted, just bounces right in, and he makes it 2-0. And the crowd is going crazy. And the 2-0 was the halftime scoreline. And you would have thought Tottenham would have learned their lesson, that they would have come back. They would have tried to fight, at least get one back, but that was not to be. As Bruno Guimaraes wins the ball in his own half, plays a beautiful ball over the top to Isaac. Van de Ven, who had an awful game in this one, was not able to keep Isak offside. He was onside. He was one-on-one with the keeper. He blasted it past Vicario, and it was 3-0 Newcastle at that point, and they were flying, and it seemed as if the hinges were coming off of Tottenham's top four battle. And that wasn't the end. There obviously was a quieter period coming up here in the game. But Newcastle did continue to pile on the chances. And eventually, at 87 minutes, from an Anthony Gordon corner, that's two assists and a goal for Anthony Gordon in this game. And Fabian Schär heads it home to make it 4-0 to Newcastle. So that was obviously the very first game of the week. And wow, look, I have to make an apology here to Newcastle United. They are traditionally in my top 8. So I make a mini table of the top 8 sides. I keep track of that to kind of determine who I think how I feel the final Premier League table will turn up. They're the only side who I haven't featured quite yet, weekly. Even Aston Villa, who were the newbies to this top 8 from this season, they've been featured in every episode to this point. My apologies to Newcastle. With the win like this, I actually will make a pledge that Newcastle will get mentioned every single week. So their games, the reason why I haven't really necessarily spoken about them is because they're not in the title race and they're not really in the top 4 race either. But that being said, neither is Chelsea and neither is Man United, and I've covered their games. So, Newcastle, accept my apology, please. You definitely will be getting coverage every week until the end of the season. That is from my word to yours, and I'm a man of my word. But just what an absolutely tone-setting or opening game for the rest of the round. I want to say, Premier League did give Alexander Isak the man of the match. From what I watched, I thought Anthony Gordon really deserves a shout out here because he absolutely ran this game. He bossed this game. Everything that was good about Newcastle did come from Anthony Gordon. I think, just what an incredible performance by him. Look, he has had a good season, and obviously he came in last year in the middle of the year from Everton. And I think he took some time to settle in, but he's actually had some good moments in some really big games this season. And he literally tore Tottenham apart on his own in this game. Everything that was good about Newcastle was due to the work rate of Anthony Gordon. Um, in terms of Tottenham Hotspur, um, as I said, this was a massive game for them. They were put in the box seat for the top four race. They had to win this game to put a lot of pressure on Aston Villa, who were going away to the Emirates, and to really kind of make a kind of a bit of a sucker punch to them, and they weren't able to do it. They brought life to this top four race, and I'm going to mention obviously what goes on in the further fixtures, but I thought this was a tone setter for the rest of the weekend. So congratulations to Newcastle. They come out 4-0 winners over Tottenham Hotspur. And look, Tottenham, all I can say is you guys just can't do this every year. You can't build yourself up at the start of the year in order to crumble when it matters the most. And you're not, and this is a theme, by the way. Tottenham, you're not alone in this conversation. I'm going to be talking to some teams who do similar things later on in this video. Yeah? But you're the first ones. All right? You're not getting let off. One thing I'm going to do in this video is I'm not going to let anyone off. There are many teams here that had awful weeks. This was a defining week in the Premier League, right? Like, you're going to see most of the teams that I feature in these Premier League show, most of them tripped up this week. More than 50% tripped up this week. So you're not alone here. Everybody else will get theirs. I'm going to give it to them. But you need to get criticized for this, because obviously Newcastle is a tough place to go and win or get points. But you guys needed to make a statement here. You guys didn't have European football. Aston Villa had European football. You had an entire week to get ready for Newcastle, and you guys came out looking pretty bad. All right? So it's not over, and I'm going to state that for everything, because I think a lot of the mainstream media, a lot of other YouTubers have declared many different races to be over. This one specifically is definitely not over. They still have one game edge. At this point of speaking, in my review, 2-game edge over Aston Villa. You still have a chance to do this. But you screwed up here. Into this title race talk. And as I'm just going to lay the groundwork, coming into this week, Arsenal were top of the league on 71 points with a goal difference advantage over Liverpool, who were second also on 71 points. And Man City set in third, 1 point behind with 70 points. And Man City was who got to kick off this title race match week 33 first. And they started off fast. First of all, they coming off of their 3-3 classic at the Bernabeu with Real Madrid. They made many changes. Ederson returns from his injury that he had against Liverpool. This is his first appearance back. A start was given to Rico Lewis, Jeremy Doku, Kevin De Bruyne, who missed with an illness in the midweek, came back in as well. Julian Alvarez got the start. Mateus Nunes got the start. Mateo Kovacic got the start. So many changes. I'm trying to remind myself of who played the Real Madrid game for Man City. Did Kovacic start? If anybody wants to correct me, please feel free to in the comment section. I don't have the team sheet for the Real Madrid game in front of me, but I do have the team sheet in front of me for the Premier League game against Luton. Anyway, Man City start off very, very fast, and all of a sudden, Erling Haaland, who has been under so much scrutiny by the media, unfair scrutiny by the media, is on the break, and he shoots. The ball is deflected, and it falls to Doku, whose shot is also deflected, and then it falls right in the perfect area to Haaland, who volleys it like Wayne Rooney style on the turn, takes a slight deflection off of Hashioka, and it goes brilliantly into the back of the net, and that really sets the tone for what was a dominant display by Manchester City. Now, Hashioka, that's his second own goal in such types of games. Obviously, he had one a week and a half ago at the Emirates against Arsenal. He has now one here at the Etihad against Manchester City. And to be fair, though, Liverpool hung in there from this point in for a good hour or so. So there was a Man City definitely had the majority of the ball. They dominated it. Luton sat back, really without anything of note. And we went into halftime still with Man City 1-0 up. Second half, though, was a barrage of goals. It was a very entertaining second half, dominated by the defending champions. And Julian Alvarez tees it up for Kovacic, who nails a beautiful, beautiful long-range strike into the top corner on 64 minutes, which put Manchester City 2-0 up. Not long later, 12 minutes later, Erling Haaland should start, by the way, by saying that Doku with a beautiful, by the way, Doku, I just want to take a moment here to pause and talk about Jeremy Doku. We've talked about his teammate Phil Foden, who, by the way, did not feature in this game. So a second such consecutive Premier League game with Phil Foden on the sidelines for Man City. But Doku this was his best game in a Man City shirt, and he wins this penalty with some great trickery on his left wing, and he gets taken down. I think he kind of falls into it, so another penalty shout. And Man City awarded a penalty. Look, there are criticisms that obviously it's been notified. Obviously, my last show was riddled with penalty decisions. I think this one, look, we talk about Bukayo Saka's one. We talk about the penalty given for Elliott against Man United. And I think this one is also of a similar vein to the Elliott one, where I think Doku does kind of go down. I don't really see as much contact. Like, the contact does happen, but Doku does fall into it first. Yet the penalty is given. So I am seeing a lot of inconsistency with some of these, but now the penalties are starting to flow for the title race teams. And Erling Haaland, this time, having been denied his brilliant goal earlier, he puts it away from the spot. Man City go 3-0 up, and that is basically them having put pressure on Arsenal and on Liverpool to respond. They didn't play until the following day. But there was a twist in the tail, a light fight back. And Ross Barkley finds himself in the box. He does coolly put it past Ederson, and it did go to 3-1. But Manchester City and Jeremy Doku, with some brilliant work, absolutely brilliant work, trots in on it, and he, with the assist from Guardiola, and he puts Man City 4-1 up, and he gritties himself away down the sideline in celebration. And again, excellent trickery down that wing. Tees it up again in injury time for Josko Gvardiol, who scored a brilliant goal at the Bernabeu, scores another brilliant goal of similar quality here, and Man City win 5-1. So they definitely improved on the goal difference. They needed to catch up with Arsenal, and they did so here, and they put the pressure on the other two teams, and they go top of the league onto 73 points after beating Luton. And again, I just want to call out the Premier League again. They officially named Erling Haaland the man of the match. I don't understand how they could have done that because Jeremy Doku was all over this game. This was his best performance in a Manchester City shirt. Like he basically set up the opening goal for Haaland. He sets up he sets up the penalty. He wins the penalty. Um, he he scores. He sets up the Guardiola goal. Like he Luton could not deal with Doku down the left wing. They just could not deal with him, and he was the outstanding performer for me in this game. So again, I have to shout out the Premier League and say, guys, we need to change the system here because I get it's fan vote, but you're giving strikers the credit when midfielders and wingers are doing so much work and imposing themselves in games that those guys need to be given credit. Like I understand the threat of Erling Haaland is a massive one. It does set up um, and give space to other players out wide and in the midfield areas because you have to deal with Haaland. But Jeremy Doku, if you're out there and if you happen to watch this video, well done because you impressed me. Look, I had criticisms for him. I thought he came in with a lot of hype and he hadn't really delivered on this year, but now with these games coming thick and fast and for the Champions League games to be coming in the middle of the week, Pep has had to rotate his squad and he's had to rely on guys like Doku, and he played so well in this game. And Man City go top of the Premier League, and we're gonna have a further discussion later on the video after I've discussed the other results in terms of where this Premier League title race is. But they did the job. The champions kept composed. They had it. They couldn't have had an easier fixture coming back from Madrid, and they're professional. And look, they do concede the goal, and um, I've given them criticism. I have to come back into the mic. I've given them criticism regarding the goals that they've conceded, and they do concede a sloppy goal here, but it's at the 3-0 mark. So it's different when you're 3-0 up and you concede one at the end versus when you go behind, when you concede goals to go behind or you concede equalizers, which they have been doing in previous games. Man City are doing what they always do, which is when it comes to these important title run-ins, they're flawless. And today, or in this game, they were flawless. And I'm always going to give you criticism and I'll give you praise. Man City deserves nothing but praise recently. They do have a big game coming up. Real Madrid come to Etihad for the second leg of the Champions League. And we will be covering that on our next episode of the Premier League show. I'm actually going to recap next weekend, but I am going to begin with the Champions League games and then talk about the Premier League in my next one. So in my previous video, I did Premier League, then Champions League. This time around, I'm going to do Champions League, then Premier League. So Real Madrid are going to come to town. We're going to cover that on our next video. But Man City go top of the league, and we move on. Before we discuss the Liverpool game and the Arsenal game in response to the Manchester City victory, we're going to talk about the late game on Saturday night or Sunday morning Australia time. And that was Manchester United going away to Bournemouth. Look, I think Man United have had a good week this week in general, just being able to inflict the pain that they did last week on Liverpool in denying them top spot. Be able to sit back and also watch Liverpool get punished at home against Atalanta in the Europa League. I know that they were in pain following that result against Chelsea, but I think they've had about a week and a half to reprieve to kind of enjoy the football Look, I think they know that their season isn't really going anywhere. There's a lot of criticism um, of the manager. There's a lot of belief that manager is not going to be remaining at Man United. There's been a change in direction with Ineos coming in. Um, so there can be a lot of change for Man United coming up. So for them, these games are just ticking off. They are going to play FA Cup um, next week, which we will also cover. So next week's Premier League show, we're going to be covering Champions League, Premier League, FA Cup. So it's going to be a packed show next week. But let's quickly go through this Manchester United game. They went to the Vitality Stadium to play Bournemouth. And they go 1-0 down early. Man, it kind of pains me to watch this highlight, but because I feel bad for the kid. But Marco Senesi puts in a through ball, and there's a tussle kind of there between Solanke and young Willie Kambawala. And Kambawala slips over. He loses his footing and he slips over, and Solanke skips past him. It creates space for him to put in the shot, and Bournemouth go 1-0 up. And pain there for Manchester United. But I gotta say, Bruno Fernandes has, under the radar, quietly really put together some really good performances as of late. And he really ran this game for Man United. Without Bruno Fernandes in this game, Man United probably would have lost. But also big up to Garnacho. We'll get to Garnacho a bit later because there are things to get into in terms of Garnacho, but he does play an important role here in this goal. He does some really brilliant work down that right wing to create a shot for himself, and it bounces out to Rashford, who is able to keep the play alive, gets it back out to Garnacho, who slides it in for Bruno Fernandes, and Bruno Fernandes does level the scoreline for Manchester United at 1 apiece. However, Bournemouth again get in, and it's Justin Kluivert. Obviously, everyone is familiar with his father, the Dutch legend. He some brilliant piece of footwork after a pass also from Marco Senesi, and he clears the Manchester United defense, and he calmly, coolly responds, putting the ball into the opposite corner. And Bournemouth went 2-1 up at halftime. That was 36 minutes. At halftime, Bournemouth went 2-1 up. And Man United do dominate the proceeding. They definitely put on the pressure from here on out for a very long time. Many opportunities that they came close for Man United. They came off the post a few times, hit the crossbar. The pressure did tell. And eventually, controversially, Mainu does take a shot which takes a deflection and comes off of Adam Smith's arm. He's trying to get himself out of the way, and it does hit his arm. Look, I personally think, again, another very, very controversial penalty decision given. The inconsistencies around everywhere. Like a handball was not given in the Champions League on Gabriel when he touched the ball from a goal kick. And this one is a lot less purposeful. And it kind of just ricochets and comes onto Adam Smith's arm. I don't think he's trying to put his arm in the way. I think he's trying to get out of the way, but he hits the arm. The referee points to the spot, and all the pressure did tell. And Bruno Fernandes calmly puts in his second goal from the penalty spot, and that was 2-2. Now in injury time, there was an opportunity here for Bournemouth. They thought they had won a penalty, but it was determined that it was actually the foul occurred right outside the area, so it turned into a free kick, which Bournemouth was unable to convert. But the game ends at 2-2, and another dropped 2 points by Eric Ten Hag's Man United. And look, I think they've got 6 games to go after this one, and an FA Cup game, potentially 2. And look, another tough, embarrassing result, I think, for Man United. Look, they fought back in. They put a lot of pressure on. Obviously, Bruno Fernandes, as we mentioned, hits the crossbar. Look, they did have the better of the. I do think that Man United did outplay Bournemouth for large parts of this game, but they weren't really able to put away their chances, and Bournemouth were clinical when they needed to be. And look, it's going to be a long off season for Man United. I'm not going to ramble on too much about this game. They're going to have a lot of work to do, and so we talked about Spurs. They dropped points earlier. This is the second big club to drop points again. Look, they had a 2-2 result against Liverpool, right? This time, the 2-2 result against Bournemouth is nothing to celebrate about. One was 2 points, 1 point gain. This one was definitely 2 points dropped. And look, big up to Bruno Fernandes. This time, the man of the match was correctly awarded. Without him, he was everything for Man United in this game. He's been everything for Man United in the 2 games prior to this as well. So I want him to be recognized for the form that he's picking up. It's coming under the radar. I don't hear people discussing it. I've had him on my thumbnails now in recent weeks because he's been really good. And the point that Man United did pick up in this game was truly down to Bruno Fernandes. So big up to Bruno Fernandes. And yeah, look, lots of work to do. I don't know if Ten Hag is there next year. I'm just going to be blunt. And they're going to have to find new management. They're going to probably have to ship off a few of these players and rebuild this team, really. I think they're going to have to pull it down to its bare bones, because I think there's a lot of players at Man United who've been around for far too long. And they need to change the culture. They need someone has to be. They thought maybe that Ronaldo was the sacrificial lamb for the change of the culture. It seems like that piece of decision making by Ten Hag did not pay off. They thought maybe that Sancho was what was bad for the culture, but the problem is when you have issues like this, it spreads. It's not one player. It could start from one player, but it spreads around the locker room. And this issue has been going on way before Ronaldo or Sancho came to Man. Well, Ronaldo came back and or Sancho came. This has been happening for a while now. And they just need to have a reset. They need to keep players that are willing to buy into the new manager's philosophy. And they need to build a squad that is committed to the project, and they need to decide which direction they go, Ineos, with their new project, and there's going to be a lot of work to go for Man United. Unfortunately, the post-Fergie era hasn't really breeded much success, and they now need to go into a third phase where they reset. Forget about Sir Alex Ferguson. Forget about that. You have to forget about the legacy of what Manchester United is at the moment. They need to realize that they're starting from the ground zero. And ground zero for Man United is still going to be a top 10 finish. But look, we've seen it. We've seen it with other teams. They just need to reset everything. So, but we move on, and we'll move on to the title race now. So, the title race continues. Manchester City got the 3 points in their game. And next on the block was Liverpool. Now, I did not discuss the Europa League. Just because I can't make a full show based on one game. I'm not a Liverpool channel, so I don't really go into full full on match reactions like that to one particular game. At least not at this point. Like in the future, as this channel grows, and hopefully I get more presenters and creators to work alongside me, we might have the ability and the flexibility to cover more and more games. But before I talk about what happened here in the Premier League, Liverpool lost 3-0 at home in the first leg against Atalanta, which I just did kind of hint at while I was talking about United. From their perspective, enjoying watching that happen. And I'll get into a bit of a theme here for these Sunday games, and that is called domino effect. And I discussed domino effect before. And that is, and I brought up the example of the Philadelphia Eagles from the NFL last season, where you can be winning and the momentum goes on, and momentum is a powerful thing. Momentum is a powerful thing in the positive way, is also powerful in a negative way. When you're winning, and especially when you're starting to win in any way possible, and you feel kind of unbeatable, like you pull games results out of the bag week in and week out, you have to understand that there are ways to do it which are sustainable, and there are ways to do it that are unsustainable. And the way that Liverpool did it was unsustainable. Now, big up to Klopp. I mentioned in a couple videos back the whole picture of Liverpool's season. He's in what would be his final year as Liverpool manager. He's done an unbelievable job dealing with all the injuries that they've had, in like just being able to keep Liverpool afloat, not just afloat, but at top of the Premier League. And they've done just tremendously well to get to this point, but you felt week in and week out that they were vulnerable, that they were close to something happening. And it happened last week finally against Manchester United, and it continued in the Europa League, and all of a sudden that one little chink, that one little setback, Liverpool looked out of it in the midweek game against Atlanta. There was no life, unfortunately, in that Liverpool team. One thing this Liverpool team does is they create a lot of chances. Darwin Núñez had ability to score a hat-trick with the chances he got against Atalanta, but he couldn't convert it. And at the moment, I think that's been Liverpool's theme. And as I said, when you're conceding goals, that puts pressure on you to score goals, and goals sometimes come down to form. And there are times when you're on form and you could score the goals. It doesn't matter. You can pull results out of the bag. But eventually, there are going to come days where you're not able to quite do that, and the chances aren't quite being put away. You're not clinical, and then you come back to rue those chances. But they did have an opportunity to bounce back. Their Europa League future hinges in the bounce, but they did go. They come back to another game at Anfield. They hosted Crystal Palace, with an opportunity for them to go top of the Premier League, at least for now, and respond to Manchester City. Well, didn't start off well for them. And you can tell the shell-shockness, the depression, a little bit in the lack of life in Liverpool all of a sudden. And you can feel it when Crystal Palace started off the game and they were playing really, really, really well. Nice piece of interchange, and Tariq Mitchell set up Eze, who put the ball past Alisson, who, by the way, just like Ederson, makes his first return for Liverpool, so actually big up to Alisson. But he was not able to keep out Eze, and the sleepwalking of this game continued for Liverpool. Van Dijk falls down and Mateta comes in, and he's one-on-one with the goalie, and Alisson comes out and he chips Alisson, and it looks like it's about to go 2-0, and it basically hit the line when Andrew Robertson, saves the ball on the line. Otherwise, Crystal Palace could have gone 2-0 up in that game. And I think that was the wake-up call Liverpool needed, because from then on out, I think Liverpool dominated the majority of this game, and they created many, many chances. Wataru Endo hits the post, the crossbar from a corner. Diaz, he also hits the post. Trying to think back some of the big chances there. There was a chance for Diogo Jota. There was a chance for Mohamed Salah. There was a chance from Curtis Jones, who was one-on-one with the keeper, with Dean Henderson, and he put it wide. And unfortunately, this was not Liverpool's day. It does end Crystal Palace 1, Liverpool 0. And woo! This Premier League, as I said, this is a huge week in the Premier League. Especially, what an awful week for Liverpool. It began with the draw of Man United, the lose to Atalanta, and now they've lost 2 games in a row at Anfield in the midweek with a couple days between, and they failed to go top of the Premier League. And look, I don't know what else to say at this moment in time. Look, it's exciting because you see these twists, and this was so. The first twist in the run-in was Liverpool having the box seat and giving it up by drawing with Man United. The second twist here in the run-in, again, that's Liverpool twice. So I don't want to big myself up too much, but while they were winning, and at my very first video, and on my second video, I did say that Liverpool were the most vulnerable team out of the 3, and it's proven to be that way. Look, there's a reason why I've come here and made a channel, because a lot of times the media gets so hyped up, and there are some teams within the media that they get excused. They get glorified, and they're not telling you the story of what's actually happening in the game. They show you final scores, but they're not talking about performances. They show you tables, and they're not talking about performances. The performances of Liverpool amongst the 3 have been the most inconsistent. While the table would say that they were the most consistent, the performance was the most inconsistent. And they were riding a lot on emotion and drive, and they create many chances, and they got themselves out of trouble. They get last-minute winners. They come back from equalizers and going behind with their amazing ability to score goals. But eventually, once that momentum of emotion took a hit, it's like as I say, I use the word domino effect. So the first domino falls down, hits the next domino, which hits the next domino. So right now you've had 3 dominoes fall in a row now for Liverpool. Is that 4th domino now? Here's the question. Because unfortunately for them, their next game is going to be a very, very tough task, which is going away to Italy to try to overturn Atalanta. A 3-0 deficit. That 4th domino is like this. It's getting ready to fall over. Like, almost certainly is that 4th domino going to fall over. Unless something miraculous happens. If that 4th domino... Look, the 4th domino... There's a 4th domino and the 5th domino. Because the 4th domino and the 5th domino here for Liverpool, they don't necessarily correlate. The 4th domino is almost like this. If they're somehow able to get the domino to sit here like this, and by doing that would mean either scoring 3 without reply and forcing extra time in Italy and winning on penalties, or scoring 4 or more without reply, that could save Liverpool's season. almost assuredly in terms of the Europa League, by for sure, and doing that could also again bring that emotion, that energy back for them for their next game in the Premier League, which I believe is away from home. They actually now enter into a string of 3 straight games away from home. I believe um, they play Fulham. Do they play Fulham next week? Let's take a look on the fixtures here. Yes, they go to Craven Cottage this coming weekend. Um, that's that fifth domino. And Fulham have done really well at home, especially against some of the bigger sides. They've gotten results. Like famously on New Year's Eve against Arsenal, they beat them. They came back from 1-0 down to beat Arsenal. And it's going to be a tough game for Liverpool. But as much as this last week, excuse me, has put a dent in almost the entire season for Liverpool, they have an opportunity to save themselves. No, obviously, I think most certainly that fourth domino is going to fall and they're going to come out of the Europa League. But what's important is the game against Fulham. I wanna state something, and I'm gonna state it more once we discuss the next game. But this title race is not over, and Man City will play in the FA Cup this week, so they're not going to be in action. Liverpool have a chance to rebound. They have a chance to go top of the Premier League. If they're able to do that, they can get this season back on track. I did mention Atalanta, but that thing is almost gone. It's going to be very unlikely. So, in terms of the psychology, I think regardless of what happens in Atalanta, they have to make sure they're up for that game against Fulham. If they're able to overturn Atalanta, that's something totally different. That's huge. But this season's not over, Liverpool fans. Look, I'm not going to criticize you because you've had such a tough week, guys, and I'm not going to sit here and pile on the pressure. I'm not that type of guy. I have given you my cooking. I've kind of told you, I gave you a warning of what was going to happen. I could see it. But again, even in those warnings, I said it doesn't mean that you guys can't come out and win the Premier League. It does not mean that. At this point in the season, by them failing to win, Man City still have a 2-point edge. That's one draw. What's one result? There are going to be 6 games to go. It's not over. It's not over. Okay? And just don't let the dominoes continue to fall. I did talk about domino effects, but how many dominoes are sitting there on the board? Are there only... We're going to find out. But wins can be huge because they can halt the downward spiral, and they can put some new spring in your steps. So I'm here as a messenger not only of warnings of what could have happened, but also here a messenger of hope. And I'm here to tell you guys that this is not over. Be strong, Liverpool fans. Get behind your team, and let's see what happens. But this is your final warning. I'm not talking about Atalanta, I'm talking about Fulham. If you're unable to beat Fulham, Liverpool, their chances of winning the title are done. Let's see in the next show when I come back here. Both of those games would have transpired by the time I come here. And actually, I'll cover, because we're going to be covering the European results on my next review show, my next Premier League show, we will talk about Europa League as well. So we'll put into context kind of all of this together. And let's see. But this is a big one for Liverpool. You know, title champions go through adversity, and It's not about how you're doing when you're doing well. It's about how you pick yourself up from your low points. That's what title challengers, that's what champions do. Is this a week now where Jurgen Klopp, where the team says, you know what, we cannot go out like this, and they rally around Jurgen Klopp, and they're able to pick up the performance. So let's see. But we move on, and now we come on to the biggest game of the weekend, and it involves not just the title race but also the top four race, and a large conversation to be had here. Um, I was talking about Liverpool and how I got that piece of analysis correct. Look, I'm sitting here after this next one, and we've got a lot to open up. We have a change of direction that we had to take, but we also have to be fair and be keep our heads cool, because I think a lot has been said. Um, a lot of definitive things have been said. A lot of reactions have been made. So I'm going to talk about this game, which was Arsenal at home. They hosted Aston Villa. They were just given the initiative last week when Man United drew with Liverpool, and Arsenal were put in the box seat. So now we've talked about Liverpool had the advantage. They were in the box seat. They've now given it to Arsenal. What do they do? And Arsenal start out really well. By the way, the obviously the very controversial 2-2 draw against Bayern Munich, and Arteta makes changes. Unai Emery, by the way, in Aston Villa, coming off of a win against Lille in the Conference League, which was there's only about 2 days difference between that game and this game. So Zinchenko does come back into the team. Jesus is given a start up front, and Leandro Trossard is also given the start. And Kai Havertz goes back into the midfield where he hasn't been in a very long time. So Arteta makes very interesting sort of change of direction for this game. But also start out well, and I think his decision to put Kai Havertz in midfield, you can see why he had done that. And he made a few darting runs from the midfield. He got in behind Aston Villa on 3 occasions and was unable on all those occasions to put it away. And Arsenal put on the pressure. There was a ball from Odegaard to Saka. So Saka hits the shot just kind of a bit too across his body, and it hits the closer post. But Arsenal seemed to really have the pressure home at home. They felt they had to make a response, and you can see them knocking on the door here. But Aston Villa finally get their first kind of sniff and grip hold into this game, and it starts to blow this game into a different direction. Ollie Watkins does get a chance where he's one-on-one with David Raya, and it falls to him, but he does hit the inside of the post on a one-on-one opportunity, and it goes out. Arsenal then respond by taking the ball onto the opposite end of the field, and Leandro Trossard, from point-blank range, gets saved from Emi Martinez. So it went from almost Aston Villa against the run of play going 1-0 up to Arsenal then almost going 1-0 up themselves. And it goes into halftime at 0-0. Basically, from then on, though, in the second half, I do not know. By the way, prior to that 0-0, Saka also has a really good chance. I should go back here. Saka has a really good chance right before halftime. Similarly, it was like a similar, almost identical looking chance to the one he scored against Bayern, but this time the ball actually goes wide. So he just kind of whips it across the grass, and in the similar direction he did against Bayern, but this time it just goes wide. But Arsenal definitely had the majority spell in the first half, and this second half was almost completely different. And you would have thought that Aston Villa was the side who was pushing for the title based off of what you would see in the second half. And all of a sudden, Aston Villa dominating possession. They had the most of the ball. Arsenal struggled to really get out of their own half for majority of the second half, and the pressure was on from Aston Villa, and you could sense their crowd. You almost would thought that they were at Villa Park. That corner of the stadium, um, from the Aston Villa supporters, who went away and they did really good for their side. Arsenal support was dead. They were nervous. They didn't really do their job. They kind of sat around. They watched nervously and didn't really back their team when their team needed them the most. And eventually, the pressure told. There was another shot from Luca Digne that hits the post and hits the crossbar, then the post. So again, Arsenal just clinging on by just barely clinging on here. And eventually, there's a ball from Luca Digne again, who puts in a cross intended for Pau Torres, and the defense kind of comes to Pau Torres to try to stop him, and he takes out Gabriel, and the ball continues to go. So Pau Torres misses, but the ball continues to go, and almost that entire right-hand side was left wide open, and Leon Bailey sneaks into that back post and just puts it past David Raya, with Saliba and Rice chasing him. Too late. Nothing was covered. And Aston Villa have now really opened up this title race, really changed it. And 3 minutes later, Arsenal go gung-ho on that side of the field. One ball over the top from Tielemans. Smith Rowe does a very poor job in terms of keeping Ollie Watkins onside, and they're not being able to chase him down. Ollie Watkins then goes, David Raya comes out, chips him, and Aston Villa go on to beat Arsenal at the Emirates 2-0. And that is where our big conversation begins here. So look, let's talk about Arsenal. We should also, before we talk about Arsenal, talk about Aston Villa. And I, even earlier in this video, criticized Unai Emery for his decision to rest players against Man City, which I still hold firm on that. And look, Villa are fighting on two fronts. They also played in the Conference League, and they won. So again, I guess that was, as I said, that was a big result for them in terms of their domino effect, where they did stop the domino and they got a big result in Europe, and it went on for them to get a massive result here in the Premier League. And with Tottenham slip up, Villa are back in the driver's seat now. They're back in the driver's seat, surprisingly. But this also should be a message for another story we're going to talk about, where just stop being so desperate to call things, to come to a conclusion. That's not what sports, especially not what the Premier League is about, what sports are about. There's a reason why you wait until the final day to crown a champion. And everyone always kind of wants to make their takes and jump out and go, okay, it's over. This team has done this or this team has done that. Last week, I think everybody was kind of ready to write off Villa and say, okay, Tottenham are now going to be in the top four. And what this week has shown right in front of your faces is that it's a week-to-week league. And when it's so close, the story changes every single week. The Premier League is unforgiving. But the Premier League has a way of keeping you honest always, and that's a really good segue into what I'm going to talk about Arsenal. I have praised Arsenal since the beginning of me opening this channel, almost on a week to week basis. I actually called them the least vulnerable team. And based off the evidence of what I had seen, their ability to be solid, their ability to control games, their ability to be mature, was a reason that you thought that Arsenal deserved to be where they were. And you thought that they would almost take on that opportunity handed to them, and they would not let go, regardless of the tough fixtures. Because there's opponents, then there's a way that you're playing. There's a confidence, there's a maturity, and a formula. And if you stick to those formulas, I think for the most part, it really doesn't matter who you play, because in order to be the champion, you've got to beat everyone. They have been the best defense in Europe, and I've sat on this program and I've defended them. Not defended, I've praised. Defended is a wrong word. I've praised the way they defend. And I said that it could be it's the right formula, and I criticized the other two teams, including Man City, who now at this point have now been given the advantage. So 3 straight weeks, 3 different title favorites. I made Arsenal. I had Liverpool as the favorites before. I made Arsenal my favorites last week, and Man City are definitely now the favorites at this point. And I'm going to go on and I'm going to talk about that more elaborated. So I had the opportunity to talk about City early when I did their match review. Now we have the opportunity to talk about it in a larger context in terms of where this leaves our race. But we got to start out with Arsenal. Look, man, this is a huge crossroads now here for Mikel Arteta and for Arsenal, because they have looked so solid. And last week against Bayern, I mentioned in my review of that game, was the first crack. Domino effects, people. They weren't even giving up chances, let alone goals. And all of a sudden, they give up 2 against Bayern in a blink of an eye. And they do it again here today. Now, I got to say, you got to put it into context as well on the defensive end part for Arsenal. I thought that for the most part, because Villa doesn't score until almost less than 10 minutes left to go in the game, right? But they do it obviously quickly, and look, I think what it comes down to for Arsenal in this game was their inability to be clinical. And when they had that momentum at the start, when Havertz was getting in behind, when Saka was getting chances, when Trossard was getting chances, they had to put one of those into the game to change the game, so they could continue their formula, and so they can continue to take the life out of the game and be dominant, and put the onus on Aston Villa to respond. That was a critical part to the formula that was missing today for Arsenal. So they were not able now, and haven't been able to in 2 games against Villa, to score. And when you let a team hang around that long, you give them a chance to gain confidence, and if that team does take that chance, especially late in the game, all of a sudden you're in scramble mode and you're in desperate mode. And that defense for that Ollie Watkins goal was inexcusable. The way Arsenal have played is that they've been able to go forward and use their creativity going forward without leaving themselves so open at the back. They've been very, you had Rice always covers the right areas. Gabriel and Saliba covers the right areas. Ben White and Kivior have been covering, and I think a little bit this has the questions need to be asked of the manager here, because he made a change all of a sudden that he didn't need to make, Yes, they drew 2-2 against Bayern. Yes, Kivior had a stinker in that first half. But every game is different, and every opponent needs a different types of tools to get it past. I believe he used the wrong tools against Bayern Munich, looking at it, and I also believe he's used the wrong tools here. He's overreacted. Alexander Zinchenko had a very bad game, and yes, he came on, and he was the right move to make in that second half of that Bayern game because of the extra creativity and the extra body he can put into midfield. But he's not a good defender, and the formula needed to be Jakub Kivior. The formula has led them to an unbeaten run since the turn of the year that ended in this game has been due to the solidity of that back four. And not only that, he changed Ben White. Tomiyasu was coming on. I thought he was going to come on for Zinchenko, which would have made sense. But he came on for Ben White, who has been arguably Arsenal's best performer. He's been when I think of Arsenal and the solidity that I praise them for, I think of Ben White. I actually imagine Ben White. I think how he stands tall. He always does a great job in terms of providing an outlet for Saka, and also being able to be so solid at the back and always come back to cover his positions. And it's no surprise to me that when Ben White, who is not discussed about in terms of how this game has unfolded, but I'm going to do it. When you make that change, obviously the attack on the other end comes from a result of Tomiyasu on that side. So Ben White is no longer there. So also kind of, if you think about it, they went from having a back four of four center backs to having a back four of two center backs and two full backs. So he's gone completely off the formula here. You can argue he's going to do it to try to chase the game. He wants more width out wide from his fullback, so he wants guys can overlap. But he needed to stick to what was working, and he needed to stick to believing that as long as they're solid at the back, that they have all the time in the world to try to get that goal that put them in front. The other thing that I'm critical of is putting Havertz in midfield. Now, while that worked in the first half, Kai Havertz has been, like, in terms of Kai Havertz being able to come in there and dart in behind, get in behind and make chances. Kai Havertz has been effective up front, and that change for him to go up front has been one of the catalysts to Arsenal's really good run, and one of the reasons why they were so solid. Havertz, I think, used a lot of energy in order to get himself in the goal-scoring positions from midfield, in where he wasn't able to put the finish away. When he's already in that advanced position up front, he could use that energy to just finish off and link the play between Saka and Trossard and Odegaard, like he's been doing from that up front position. Gabriel Jesus has not been good. And yet he comes on and he makes a difference in that Bayern game. But just because of that, that's sort of the thing that I don't get. So if a player is being a super sub, and he's clearly showing you an impact as being a super sub, and you can turn to him to change games, why have now you've changed that, knowing that you can turn to him to change games if you put him in from the beginning, from the start? Like, it's mind-boggling. And same thing with I think Trossard, I think, has been the most informed player for Arsenal. You can understand the decision, and actually I'm not going to go too far as to criticize that. And Martinelli has been off form, so you can't really argue that. But it was more the Kai Havertz decision. I think eventually Mikel Arteta needs to decide to start Thomas Partey alongside Declan Rice. If he wasn't going to play Jorginho in this game, he's got to play Thomas Partey in this game. Thomas Partey and Declan Rice could have kept that midfield ticking and could have really kept Arsenal in the attacking areas and been able to create a wall in order to pin Aston Villa into the Arsenal side. But the pressure that Villa put on, I don't believe a midfield of Havertz, and Rice and Smith Rowe, and which is that's why I'll lead to the next thing. Where look, Arteta says that Odegaard was carrying something, he picked up something, which we're going to find out in terms of his selection for when they go to Munich. Um, but that having using that as your midfield is not going to work when you're trying to grab a hold of the game back of the game. He at no point introduces Thomas Partey to this game. He brings on Martinelli. Now, he does bring on Jorginho for Jesus, but those changes come too late. Those changes happen after he's already in trouble. What he had to do was make a change, either make a change at halftime so he can be able to push on and be dominant in the second half. But he hadn't started Partey from the start. It's very arrogant for Mikel Arteta. He was arrogant in his team selection for Luton, which he got away with, and he was arrogant in his team selection for Bayern Munich. And this one was just an overreaction from the Munich game, just carrying off of that emotion and being like, you made a difference for me against Bayern Munich, you're going to get to start. You weren't good, Kivior, you're not going to get to start. But every game, as I just mentioned with Liverpool, especially when you go from different competitions, it's a different thing. Like how could a manager at this point, now he's 4 or 5 years into his Arsenal project, not know that? Look, I do think that Arsenal still were solid for the most part defensively, but I think the weaknesses came from just an experimentation. And I understand that when you're at this point in the season, you're trying to keep your team fresh for all fronts. But he could still have done that by making the correct changes. Kivior played a half. He could have started in this game, right? Thomas Partey has not started for Arsenal, except bar the Luton game. He has not started next to Declan Rice. So when you put Declan Rice in this holding midfielder here, the reason why it's worked is Jorginho's played with Rice and it's allowed Jorginho to be the holder and given Rice the ability to move forward and be part of this and, be part of this game. Make an impact from the number 8 position. And he's got to try doing it with Partey at some point. And I think now it's too late from that respect. It's too late from the perspective of they have now given Man City now. They put the title in Man City's hands. And that's where I go to next with this conversation. Man City deserve praise for being the champions that they are. Yes, they've been conceding goals at the back, but they do remain consistent. They took care of their business. They're professional against Luton. And Pep has got such a strong side that he's able to rotate. I feel like he's laid the standard that all the other managers try to reach. And now it's the titles in their hands. But I'm going to praise them. I'm going to change my ranking of vulnerability to the following. Man City are the least vulnerable. Why? Because they have experience in these title races. They know how to get it done. They've been there every year, and they have the confidence from being able to to have these results go their way. They have that confidence, and they have the know-how in order to do it. Second most vulnerable is Arsenal, and here's why. They deserve lots of criticism. I have now just criticized them for it. And they've now yet again come to this part of the season and where the pressure is on and they have the ability to go ahead and win the league, and they've fallen at a crucial hurdle. But this is where I'm going to underline it at this point in time and say, let's see, this is another opportunity for Arsenal to show that they're different. Because last year, when it started to fall away from them, they spit the dummy and they allowed the domino effect to continue. A draw against Liverpool led to a draw against West Ham, led to a draw against Southampton, which led to a loss against Man City, which led to a loss against Brighton, and that's where the bottling it really took place. And they weren't able to compose themselves at the time when it started to slip and hold on to it and rebound and say, look, this happened, but let's keep going. This is not over. They need to, at this point, and Liverpool, this is a shout out message to both of you guys. I called out Tottenham before. You guys have screwed up. But you guys both still have a chance to win this league. And I'm going to stick out my neck here and say, by the way, Liverpool is third on my list, but I'm going to stick out my neck here and say, this race is not over. And for anybody who wants to call it over, you're disrespecting the game. Your PTSD of seasons past have led you to say this, but as much as I've now made Man City my least vulnerable team, to this point, they've been more vulnerable than they have been in years past. They even conceded in this game, obviously from 3-1 up, but they've conceded a lot of games. You could watch the template for that Crystal Palace game. And the domino effects can happen for them as much as they can for the other teams. In fact, it has. The draw against Liverpool led to a draw against Arsenal, right? Earlier on in the year, a loss against Arsenal led to a loss against Villa. And this title race is going to have many twists and turns. So we've already seen now 3 in 2 weeks twists to this title race. Drop points. What makes you think that won't happen again? That's the beauty of this race. I still can't call it. I'm not going to disrespect the game by calling it. Man City are the favorites, and they deserve to be the favorites at this point. And they have basically been the favorites all season because of their reputation. But this is far from over. And games have to be played out. And no one saw Liverpool losing to Crystal Palace. No one saw Liverpool losing to Atalanta. No one saw Arsenal losing to Aston Villa. These problems are like Man City, as good as they've been, they're not exempt from potentially having these issues. This is professional sports. You have to fight every day to the end of the race. And I'll tell you this much. If Arsenal's fans and Liverpool's fans, if Arsenal's players and Liverpool's players believe that that's it, then it is it. Because you do not have enough trust in yourself to steady the ship, make sure you're there. Just keep winning. Just go back, just dig in there, win your next games, stay in striking distance. I'm telling you, between now and the end of this season, Man City are not going to go perfect. I'm actually going to sit here, look into the camera and say, I actually don't see it. They've got some tough games away from home that people don't see. I can't label Fulham as tough away from home for Liverpool without labeling it as tough away from home for City. I couldn't have labeled Brighton as tough away from home for Arsenal last week and not label it tough away from home for City. Now, I did say I expect City to win, and you do expect City to win, and you expect them to win all these games. Is Is going away to Tottenham Hotspur going to be easy when Tottenham? Look, I think honestly, I think this result as well, with Tottenham losing and Villa winning, means that Tottenham don't have the space to just allow Man City to go to the title so that they deny Arsenal. As much as their fans might say, "Oh well, you know what? If I'm playing Europa League as long as Arsenal win," that's very nice and easy to say. But for Ange Postecoglou, who is a professional football manager, who has um, who has targets that he needs to achieve, for Daniel Levy, they need to have Champions League football for their finances so that they can attract more players and they can go to the next step of their project. They need so Tottenham, and by the way, Tottenham's going to play Arsenal as well. So if Tottenham is going to deny Arsenal the league, they need to do it by beating Arsenal. I actually don't think they're going to do it by falling over for Manchester City. Just like Liverpool, just like Arsenal, Man City need to go ahead and win this title. Put the pressure on Liverpool because they were in the box seat. They took it. Like actually, even before that, there was in Arsenal's hands, then it was Liverpool's hands, then it was back in Arsenal's hands. Now it's in Man City's hands. So every week, the team who's had the title in their hands has proceeded to slip. Man City now will not play for 2 weeks. They're going to play the FA Cup. They're going to play the Champions League. They're going to play the FA Cup. And then they're going to play away at Brighton. That is a lot of different backing and forth in between games. And you do expect Pep, with the experience he's had, he's done this before. They won the treble. But now they're going to fight on all three fronts in three different competitions. And that can change and switch along, like bring out of you. That's play Chelsea at Wembley. Like, what if they lose to Chelsea at Wembley? How do they affect that? What if they get knocked out of the Champions League? Those things that are very able to happen. And for Arsenal and for Liverpool, I say to you, hang in there. This is far from over. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just continue what you're doing. Continue to win games. The title race is just as poised as it ever has been. There's a 2-point gap, right? Which means that any week, any slip up, Man City can't afford any slip up. As I said, Liverpool had to win all of their games to be the champions. And while they haven't done, and I said that if they don't win, because Arsenal have lost, and Arsenal also had to win all of their games to be the champions. I said that last week. Man City also do too. We're not going to make assume. What does assume? How assume makes an ass out of you and me. I assumed that Arsenal's defensive prowess would continue at the end. I was wrong. I take the L. I also think that consistency is important. And the consistency that's led Arsenal and Liverpool to this point, they just need to kind of put these a few bad results behind them. Arsenal can easily go to Bayern Munich, win, and change their entire season. They can then take that, go to Wolves, get a win, go top. See what happens to Man City in their games in the Champions League and the FA Cup. Because those are really big. All of these things kind of intertwine at some point. They're not, while on the points table, they're exclusive from each other. It's still the same teams feeling the same emotions in the same waves. So there's a long way to go in this. I'm not crowning nobody. We got 6 games. All right? This is a massive difference you're getting between me and other people. I'm not here. I will make some clickbaity titles because it's fun. But when you come to my actual, when you actually click in and you listen into what I have to say, I'm not clickbaity in any way. I'm not hot takey. As much as I'm called hot sports, it's not because it's hot. It's not because of hot take. It's because of hot spot, right? Because it's global. And again, thank you everyone for starting to build that global community up. You know, we're wanting to bring fans from all different sports together and maybe even introduce them. Like, I would love for an NBA fan or an NFL fan to get into the Premier League because they're watching me for those coverages and they see my Premier League stuff and they go, ooh, let's see what this is about. That's kind of my dream, what I want to do and impact people. But that's going off of a tangent here. I'm not going to be hot takey. I'm not giving anyone the title. I'm not saying, oh, City have won it. Congratulations. None of that. It's 3-3 in the Champions League game for them. It's 2-2 in the Champions League game for Arsenal. Things aren't always as cut and dry as you've seen. I saw an example in the Champions League here where everyone thought that Barcelona and Atletico Madrid were surely going through after their victories in the first leg. Well, guess what? They're both out now. They're out of the Champions League. They both lost. So that tells you football is unpredictable. That's why I never sit here and try to make you make conclusive final calls on anything. Let's wait this out to the end. Hotspot is about taking you through a journey. It's not about being overreacting to any certain match week. As you've seen, this was a crazy week. So you can't. So if you look at this crazy week, you can't go and be like, well, now it's going to settle down and Man City is going to go all the way and they're going to win to the title. No. Look at what's happened. There are other crazy weeks to come. There are other twists to come. I guarantee you, at one point, Liverpool or Arsenal again will have the chance to have the title in their hands. Or and. That's as long as they stick to it. I can't see here and be inconsistent. And when Liverpool were up front and said, look, there's a, they have to be perfect, and there's a chance they can cough it up. And Arsenal up front and said they need to be perfect. And then to say, Man City now go in front and say it's over. No. No way. That's not how it works. Final game, which was Chelsea against Everton on Monday Night Football. And I had to get my glasses on for this one because I could not believe what I saw. This is a Chelsea team that is completely different from what we've seen all season. This is easily their best performance of the year. This was a Chelsea team that looked confident. They looked at their best. The swagger was there. And this was a celebration of a young English talent by the name of Cole Palmer, who absolutely put on a show. And we've spoken about Cole. He's made it to a few of my thumbnails. One of my thumbnails for sure, and he beat Man United. Take a bow, son. Take a bow, what you've done. I'm going to get into the details of this game. Brilliant for Chelsea. Poor from Everton. We have just jump right into it. And it begins with just a lovely piece of work by Cole Palmer. Just the brilliant technical abilities on display. He nutmegs Branthwaite and he curls it into the corner, and you just could not believe the technical quality, ability on display from the City Academy graduate, because man, couldn't Man City been using him this year? I mean, they're a great side themselves, but can you imagine? And not long later, he doubles his tally when Nicholas Jackson goes through on goal after a Mudryk play on the wing, gets it to Nicholas Jackson, and he misses, but the rebound falls to Cole Palmer, who taps it in for his second. And this is just ice going through the veins of Cole Palmer. And he just continues. He continues his brilliant. And then it was a hat trick. It was a hat trick before we even got to the half an hour mark in this game, where he basically just takes the ball off of Pickford and lobs him. And he just points out to the Chelsea fans nonchalantly, and he's like, yeah, I'm on one. Nicholas Jackson would then make it 4-0. On 40, right before halftime, Cucurella with a beautiful, brilliant cross, and Jackson just picks it out of the air, turns, scores, and Celeb goes wheeling off in celebration as Chelsea put together their best 45 minutes I've ever seen them play under Maurizio Pochettino, that's for sure. And then there was a bit of a controversial moment here. Cole Palmer goes down, Madueke then goes down, Everton all over the place. And a penalty was awarded. Now, this is probably the most awkward moment of the night for Chelsea here, and I think it underlines a lot of their problems and why they are where they're at, and them being a very young side. Madueke wants to take the penalty, but Nicholas Jackson basically shoves him out of the way, and he says, no, Cole Palmer's taking the penalty. And Cole tries to get the ball off him, and Gallagher tries to get the ball off him, and Nicholas Jackson shoves Palmer. There's just so much going on here. And Gallagher has to shove Madueke out of the way so that Palmer could take it. But he does calmly, coolly take the penalty. But yeah, look, that is a massive insight into why Chelsea are the way they are. Probably a lot of issues in their locker room. And look, great, brilliant performance, and you don't want to kind of take it away, but it's something you have to talk about. To go back to talk about, because I do not see that often. Usually everyone agrees upon a penalty taker, and there's not a fight amongst teammates so publicly about who will take the penalty. It was almost like there were two sides to this. Gallagher said, no, Palmer's going to take it. Nicholas Jackson says, no, Madueke is going to take it. And there's a fight, and like it's just nuts. But anyway, Palmer, as cool as you like, makes it his fourth goal of the game, makes it 5-0 to Chelsea. And Chelsea then, right on the 90 minutes, they do make it 6-0 when across from Chilwell is put home by Alfie Gilchrist, and it was actually saved. So it was actually saved by Pickford and rebounded out to Gilchrist, who makes it 6-0 for Chelsea. So on Chelsea, just quickly, best performance I've seen them of the year. I've already said that. Just a magnificent performance by Cole Palmer, and I've got to say, I've said it in a video previous to this. Gareth Southgate needs to make sure he's got a way to have Palmer, Foden, and Saka all in a starting 11 for England, along with Bellingham, along with Rice, along with Kane. That could really cause a lot of problems to many people. I don't care how inexperienced Palmer has been at the top level. This is clearly a talent, and you got to take a talent like that on the plane to Germany, because he can make moments. He can come up with moments. There's a confidence about him that you need to have players like that who could take. He could honestly be one of the young players of the tournament. This could be a big moment for him if Palmer actually steps up for England and plays the way he's been. It's been an awful season for Chelsea, but the shining silver lining that they've had on their season is that the fact they've got Cole Palmer from City, and that he's been able to become what he's become. And no one expected this. And he looks, I mean, he's not world class, but he's looking absolutely world class. The way he's able to dominate and take over a football game like that is incredible. Now look, it is Everton, and Everton have been god-awful this year, and look, they're in big trouble of getting themselves into relegation problems. And look, they almost don't look like a Premier League side anymore. It's crazy. Look, there's only two sides ever who've never been relegated from the first division. That's Arsenal and Everton. Everton are in big trouble here. It's not just because of where they are sitting in the league, but just performances like this under the lights, to just fall and capitulate and let Chelsea do, a Chelsea team that's been struggling, mind you, for identity all year, to let them just have their way with them. To not just that, to let Chelsea have on-field fights while still dispatching of you is completely disrespectful. And look, Everton need more than just a reset. They've obviously got some big financial issues. They've broken some rules. I feel like it might be the best thing for them to actually just to go down, and it's a way for them to hide away, because they're a big club. They'll come back, but hide away and restructure your team where nobody is looking at you, when you're not under the microscope, and to be able to come back into the Premier League maybe in 2 years' time, most likely, and show us a different Everton. Show us an Everton who's figured out their problems behind the scenes, and who have just figured out an identity of what they want to be. Because at the moment, it's not looking good. It's not looking good for Everton. And yeah, but just incredible. Just please, we just have to clap Cole Palmer, because that was magnificent. Look, they have problems, Chelsea, but this could have been the confidence booster they needed just in time for what is their biggest game of the season, which is the FA Cup semi-final at Wembley against Man City, because they're going to need to be on their best form to beat that team. That's what I was talking about before, that the season is far from over. They're, you know, the domino effect is a real thing. Arsenal, Liverpool are going through it, but Man City could easily do it. Let's see what happens in the Champions League for Man City, because now they know that they're coming up on the weekend on the FA Cup against a Chelsea team that has found their confidence. They've beaten Man United in recent weeks. They've now beaten Everton convincingly and in style. So they'll be up for this. They'll have full confidence. And it's going to be a really exciting week of football. I know this week has been really action-packed. So many things going on. So much drama. What's the word I'm looking for here? The climax of the story of the Premier League season almost could have happened here. Or the first big twist. There's so much. This week of football has just been incredible. And that being said, I want to thank every single one of you again for subbing to the channel. The jump I've had in subs has been crazy. And there's going to be so much content coming out. So please make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like the video. Please hit a like on this video if you're watching it and you're enjoying the content. And hit that notification bell. We've got, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this video, we've got a lot of stuff coming up. I'm working around the clock. I know it's not coming out right now, and it's a bit of delay just because I'm kind of doing all this stuff on myself. I've also got my work to do as well, so things come out through the pipeline a bit slower than it could be. But a lot of content is on the way. We've got the NBA play-in tournament coming up. I'm going to kick off our premiere of our NBA show. My mock draft is almost going to be out. Should be out by the weekend. So subscribe, and until next time, just have a great day, people, and peace.